Now, we've been working with some basic if statements and else's, but sometimes you need to make some slightly more complicated comparisons. So we'll make a program here. We'll call it compound if. We're gonna call this if statement style compound if statements. Um, so we'll make a kind of a guess the secret code game with clues. So what we're going to start with, and please use this same secret code. So we're going to go const int code. So the code is going to be 8652. And then we're going to make a guess. So the user is going to make a guess. So we're going to see out guess the secret code. And we'll see and guess. Okay. Now, we're going to have a bunch of different outputs that we're going to display. Let's start with the really easy ones. So if the guess is equal to the code, like they've got it, then what we're going to do is we're going to see out, you guessed it. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we'll follow it up with a prompt to suggest that they guess higher and then one that they should guess lower. So if the guess is less than the code, then we should say guess higher. And if the guess is larger than the code, then we will say guess lower. And then we'll run this just to make sure that it's working. So I know what my code is already, but I will guess 500. And it will say guess higher. So this works. However, if I put in that number, it said guess higher, but it also needed to make the check to see if the guess was larger than the code. Now, if you take a look at these three, they work together to be three cases that can't possibly happen at the same time. So in this case, this is where we're going to put in some else ifs. So this way it'll find the first one. So if they guessed it correctly, then it won't have to process these other two. Okay, so let's put some more interesting hints here. Now, after the guess higher or guess lower here, we will put we'll put something a little bit different. So what I want to do is if they give us a number that, like 8,652, is divisible by 3 and 7, I want to tell them that the final code is also divisible by 3 or 7. So this is going to be, it can run, like you can guess something higher, but also make it fit this. So what I want to do is if their guess modulus 7 is 0, but then I also want to say something like if their guess modulus 3 is 0, what I want to do is I want to see out like your number, the code is also divisible, is also, maybe we'll go multiple of 3 and 7. And that's an AND-L here. I'll move that up so you can see it. Okay. So maybe that's a super random clue. Well, I know that's a super random clue, but what I want to do is I want to check to see if the number that they enter is both divisible by 7 and divisible by 3. So it's a multiple of 3 and 7. So what I want to do is I want to put the word and here, but and isn't going to work. The symbol we use to represent and is two and signs. So this is and. So what is going to happen here is if this is true and this is true, then it's going to run this section of code. If this is true, but this is not the case, then it's not going to run that code. Both of those need to be identical. Now what I want to figure out is I want to see if the ones position of the code is anywhere within the guess that they just made. So a couple things that we'll have to do is we'll say guess the secret code, and we're going to make this 4 digits. So we're going to make sure that they give us a 4-digit number here. Now, in order to break up the guess, I'm going to need int G1, G2, G3, G4. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make int C1, and that's going to be the ones position of my code. So now what I have to do is I have to figure out what all of these things are. So my G1 is going to become equal to the guess modulus 10. Now we don't really need the guess after this one anymore, so I'm going to be destroying it. So we're going to have the guess is equal to the guess divided by 10. Now G2 is going to become equal to the guess modulus 10 again. And then we'll be repeating this step. So here we go. So then the guess G3 is going to become guess modulus 10, and then G4 is going to be the same thing. So they'll be each digits. Now C1 is just going to become equal to the code modulus 10. So I don't want to break up the code. I'm just going to do that. So now what I want to do is I want to see now is the ones position of the code the same as any of the digits in the guess. So imagine that, well, it's 2. Imagine that their guess was 2222. And then, yes, it would be in there. So what I want to do is my output is going to be cout the ones position of the code is in your guess. Okay, now what is the comparison that I'm going to use to actually figure this out? So what I want to do is I want to check to see if C1 is the same as G1, but I also maybe want to check to see if the C1 is equal to G2, or the C1 is equal to G3, or maybe the C1 is equal to G4. It could be any of those. So I'm going to curly brace this up. Okay, now I have to think about what I'm putting in here. So what I want to do is I want to check to see if C1 is equal to any of these. So this one, or this one, or this one, or this one. However, or does not work as a term in C++. So what we have to do is we have to use 2 vertical lines anytime we want to represent something that is or. So That's an or. Now, how this works differently from the and is in the or situation, only one of these needs to be true in order to run this. Because I don't care if they're all the same, I just care that one of them is the same. Okay, the one last thing that we're going to do here is we're going to use ands and ors to also tell the user one of two things. Either their guess is out of the range, or they're really close to the guess. So what I want to do is I'm going to say, instead of guess higher, guess lower if they're out of range, I'm going to start my if-else ladder with the out of range possibilities. So at the top of the if-else ladder, we're going to check to see one of two things. Either the guess is lower than, now we wanted a 4-digit number, so if it's less than 1,000, that's not going to be cool. And the other situation is if the guess is larger than 9,999, that also gives us a 5-digit number. So we'll see out guess out of range. Okay, now what do I put here? So I'm okay with this if the guess is less than 100, but also if the guess is, so if we put an also here, that's kind of like an or. So what we would use is we'd use the two vertical lines. So if either it's less than 1,000 or it's more than 9,999, then the guess out is out of range. The one last thing I want to say is maybe if they're so close. So if they're within 100, I'm going to tell them. So if cout, you are so close. Okay, so now how do we do this comparison? So what we want to do is we want to say, okay, is the guess larger than the code minus 100? But also I want to indicate this if the guess is less than the code plus 100. So this means that it'll be plus minus 100. So what I want to make sure is that it is both within this range and within this range. So that is where I'm going to put an and symbol in order to solve this. So if I run the program, okay, so I am going to say 8,500. So really all I get here is a guess higher. So I'm going to run that again, and then I'm going to guess 2,421. So here I get the ones position of the code is in your guess. It doesn't matter the fact that I've got 2 because of the or, it just needs to be correct once. And then I will say guess 4. Guess out of range. So you can run through all of these possibilities just to verify that this works. But when we're using compound if statements, we use ors or ands to compare multiple things in order to determine whether it is going to be true or false.